Shabbos afternoon, after davening, in the shul there is a verbringen, and you want to participate in the verbringen. So you take off your towels and you sit down and you verbring. After the verbringen you want to go home. So you put your towels back on and you go home. Do you have to say another bracha? Is that a hefsek? So the Alter Rebbe says, right in the first paragraph in Siman Ches from Gimel, that if there was several hours in middle, then it's a hefsek. Several hours, it's probably about 3 hours. The same thing we see in the Piskei HaSiddur, almost on the bottom. I also emphasize these 3 words. It says that if you come to put it back on after several hours. Someone gets up in the morning and puts on his tefillin, and then he wants to learn some chassidus. So he takes off his tefillin and he learns chassidus for some time, and then he puts his tefillin on to daven. Does he have to say another bracha? Or that was a hefsek, and or it's not a hefsek and the first bracha is enough? So we see in the Siman Chof Hey, in Sif Chof Tes, the Alter Rebbe says, if someone took off the tefillin, and after a long time, as about 2-3 hours. Why here he says several times, several hours? Here he says 2-3 hours. Why should it be a difference between talus and tefillin? So the Rebbe explains in the letter in Tafshin Yud, it's in the Tchele Gimel, in the Digas Kedesh, Igeres Tov Kuf Mem Dalet, he explains this and some other places where we see a difference in the time of hefsek. And he says, we find in Shulchan Aruch that a hefsek in middle of mitzvah is equal to the time the mitzvah itself takes, usually. So therefore, we understand why the talus hefsek is somewhat larger than the tefillin hefsek. Because the talus you put on before the tefillin, and you take it off after the tefillin. Even more than that, probably Shabbos, you don't put on tefillin and you travel longer. So how much is the time? So we know how much our davening takes today. In the Alter Rebbe's time, when he wrote this, he writes in the Tanya, in the Igeres HaKedesh, in several letters, that from Heidu till Oleinu, it should take about an hour and a half. So that means that since you put on...
or Chol?
Chol, hour and a half. Yes. That was the whole thing that we wanted. People should sit down with Kavanas and Pirush and with the minyan and everybody together, and with the kol and with these lavas. The Misnagdim came out against it, the whole thing.
Now it's just opposite.
Now?
Misnagdim do for an hour and a half.
Okay. But in any case, since from Heidu till Oleinu is an hour and a half, so since you put on your tefillin till you take off your tefillin, it's more than an hour and a half. So it takes about, that's why it says 2 hours. If someone davens more barichas, it's more than 2 hours, so it says 2-3 hours. Talus, we daven Shabbos at least certainly longer than in the middle of the week. Even in the middle of the week, you put on the talus before the tefillin, you take it off after the tefillin, so you could take some more time. So in any way, it says several hours. Let's say it's about 3 hours in any case. So that's the difference between the time of a hefsek by talus and between the time of the hefsek by tefillin. Someone davens, in the middle of the davening, he has to go to the toilet. He takes off his talus, takes off his tefillin. When he goes to the toilet, he goes back to put on his tefillin and put on his talus. Does he have to say another bracha? Was this a hefsek? Well, this is also different between the talus and the tefillin. When he did that, when he comes back, he would have to say another bracha on the tefillin, but not on the talus. That's another difference between the talus and the tefillin. We'll speak today about several differences, legabe when it's a hefsek, between talus and tefillin.
Why?
Why is it that different? Let's see what the Alter Rebbe says. In Simon Chof Hei Sif Lamed. So he says when you took off your tefillin and you put it back on, you don't have to say another bracha. B'medvar mamurim shel yosef tzroch if we didn't go to toilet. Bein chalitzas tefillin lanachosim. Aval imosat tzroch b'intayim, he has to say again a bracha. Why? Kiven shebeis hayi lehoya yochel aniach tefillin. You're not allowed to go in with tefillin to a toilet, so it's a hefsek. But you are allowed, Meikir Adin, to go in to the toilet with talus. We go every day with talus cotton and tzitzis to the toilet. There's no problem, because it's not kedusha, it's only tashmishi. Tashmishi mitzvah, but it's not kedusha, so we are allowed. Yes, we don't go with the talus to the toilet. It says in Shulchan Aruch we should. Not only with the talus. Even in Kippur, when we go to the toilet, we should take off our kittel. It says in Shulchan Aruch we shouldn't go with the kittel into the toilet.
Forgot.
Why is it? Because the kittel is meant to be special for davening. You don't want to put it in the toilet. The talus godel is meant to be mainly for the davening. So we don't want it to be in the toilet. The gartel that we wear is meant to be for the davening. So we don't want it to be in the toilet. The gartel doesn't have any kedusha. It's just a gartel. It's a belt. But we put it on for davening, to be mardul, being libel, so it's for davening. So everything that we put on for davening, we don't want to be in the toilet. But it's not a din. So it doesn't make it to be a hefsek. So therefore, when you go into the toilet and you take off your talus, since it wasn't a must that you didn't have to, as he says, is lehoya yochel laniach film there, so it's not a hefsek. So therefore, you have to say another bracha on the tefillin, but not on the talus. You get up in the morning, and you put on tefillin, and then you're noticing that there is a mikveh here. So you take off your tefillin, you take off your talus, you go to mikveh, you take off your talus cotton, you take off everything. You go back. You don't have to say a bracha on the talus cotton and not on the talus god. A bracha always says a bracha al mitzvah tzitzis in the morning when he gets up. Then he goes to the mikveh. He comes back, he doesn't. When he goes out of the mikveh, he doesn't say again al mitzvah tefillin, al mitzvah tzitzis, because it's not a hefsek. You're allowed to go into the mikveh with the tzitzis. Certainly you don't want to stay out with it because you don't want it to get wet. But you're allowed to go with it, so it's not considered a hefsek. So that's a second occasion where we see a difference between the dinim of hefsek in tefillin and the dinim of hefsek in talus. But we'll find more of these differences. Go back to the first that we spoke, that Shabbos afternoon, you take off your talus, and you sit down to the Verbringen. It didn't go. You thought to sit there for 3 hours. It was a summer day. There was going to be a long fabrik. Then after sitting a few minutes, you didn't like the fabrik for some reason. Oh, you reminded yourself that you have to go home. You want to put your talents back on and go home. You meant to take it off for 3 hours, but you didn't. You said just for 5 minutes and you put it back on. Do you have to say another bracha? No. You put on the tefillin in the morning, and then you decided to learn Chassidus. You decided to learn Chassidus 3 hours, and you'll daven with the minyan of 10 o'clock. After 5 minutes, you decided, no, I want to daven now. You put your tefillin up. Do you have to say another bracha? Yes. What's the difference? You were planning to take it off for 3 hours in both cases. And then you put it back on. The reason of the difference is because here we don't say about a hefsek of 3 hours. A hefsek of 3 hours is a hefsek. A hefsek of going to a place that you can't have it there, like in the toilet or in the mikveh, is a hefsek. Here you didn't have a hefsek. It just, you decided to have a hefsek. It's a hefsek hadas. A hefsek hadas by tefillin is a real hefsek hadas. A hefsek hadas but talis is not a real hefsek hadas. Why? Because you hefsek hadas of talis, so you don't wear now tzitzis, you still wear tzitzis. You wear your talis cotton. So when you still wear your talis cotton, you didn't have a real hefsek hadas of the mitzvah of tzitzis. Because you still do the mitzvah. You thought to take off your talis cotton for 3 hours. But you still have a talis on you. So it's not considered a real hefsek. But film, when you take off your film, you don't have another pair of film on you. So the hefsek hadas is for real.
But tefillin makes no difference what you have in mind. You always have to make a bracha when you take it off, put it back on. Is that what you said?
No. No. We said before that the Alter Rebbe says only if it's 2-3 hours, right? We said because that's the shiur of. But here you had in mind to have 2-3 hours. When you put it back on, it's still, since you had in mind to have a hefsek of 2-3 hours, which is the size of the hefsek, so either way it's a hefsek because you have a hefsek hadas. But talis we don't consider your hefsek hadas. Because it's not a real hefsek hadas, because you still have tzitzis on you.
And according to what you said, if he had in mind to learn Chassidus less than that 3 hours,
then there is no problem.
That's right.
Then by tefillin also there is no problem.
Right. It's only
we're speaking about having in mind to more.
Longer, right.
But actually in this there is a difference between the psak of the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch and in the Siddur that he had Charlotte to lay down. Because there is a machlekes between the Mogen Avrom and the Taz. In Shulchan Aruch, it passes like the Mogen Avrom. In Siddur, it passes like the Taz. The Mogen Avrom says, yes, this halacha, that since you have talis cotton, you didn't have real hesech hadas. You know when it helps? When it wasn't the real hesech hadas. You took off your talis, and you didn't think how much. You thought you learned a little bit of Siddur. Could be 2 hours, could be 3 hours, could be 1 hour. You didn't really think about it. So then it's not a real hesech hadas. So then we say, since you have your talis cotton on, it's still not a hesech hadas. But if you had in mind to take it off for 3 hours, it's a real hesech hadas. It doesn't help that you have a talis cotton on. That's what the Mogen Avrom says. But the Taz says no. Since you have a talis cotton, it's not, we don't consider your hesech hadas. So even if we had in mind to stop to take off your talis for 3 hours, it's still not considered. And this will be the difference between how he explains it in the Shulchan Aruch and how he explains it in the Siddur. Let's say in Siman Ches, Sif Chof Hei, right in the beginning. Hapeshet talis is stam. שלא הויה בדייתי כלום. לי שיחזר ויל בשנה מיד, ולי שלא יחזר ויל בשנה מיד. אם כשפושט הטלס ניסר על הטלס קוטן, אם כן לא יסיח דייתם המצווה, לא כשיחזר וילבש את הטלס שפושט מתחילו, אין צורך לברך. When does it help? Stam. You didn't have a mind like this, you didn't have a mind like that. That's the day of the Mogen Avro. But we pass on like the Siddur, which is Basra, the final Maskona. So let's see how he says it in the Siddur. הפשע תליסה לפשו על דס להחזיר ללב של האלתר, אין הצורך להחזיר ללב בכל עניין. ואפילו פושטו על דס שלי להחזיר ללב של האלתר. ואחר כך נראים להחזיר ללב של האלתר. It wasn't stam. He had in mind not to put it back on. אם נשאר עליו טלס קוטן, אין הצורך להחזיר ללב. So it helps even if you didn't have in mind. In Shonor he says that Talaskotten helps only when it was stam. In the Siddur he says it helps even when you had in mind not to put it back on right away. You had in mind to make a hefsek of several hours. So therefore the difference between the talis and the tefillin is larger. But tefillin, even if you took off the tefillin, you didn't know how long it's going to be, it's a hefsek. Because you thought maybe it's going to be several hours. So it's a hefsek. By tzitzis, but alas kodl is not a hefsek, even if you had in mind beferish that it will take off several hours. Since you had a talis kodl, your hesech hadas is not considered. But that's only if you had in mind to take it off for a few hours. Let's say you had in mind to take it off today and to put it back after an hour. Then you decided to change your mind.
Go back tomorrow.
You change your mind, you want to put it back on. And I'll tell you when it happens, and it happens very often. Angeschreidisch. We are always used to that when after we say the Rabbi Tam's film, and we take off Rabbi Tam's film, we take off the talis.
Yeah.
Rishedesh, we don't take off the talis. We stay with the talis without musaf. But I'm so used to. So I took off Rabbi Tam's and I took off the talis. And then after I take off the talis, I went, whoops, I still have to have musaf. How will I put it back on?
You have to make a bracha.
You have to make a bracha. Because when does it help? But you still have a talis cotton on. So maybe the hesech hadas is not considered. But hesech hadas not considered when you took it off for several hours. But if you took it off completely, tomorrow is a new din, a new day. It's a hesech, but night is a potter from tefillin, from tzitzis, it's a new din. So today you had it in mind to take it off completely. He doesn't say that that would help. Even the Tan says when you took it off, you had in mind for a few hours. But still.
How do we do everything Kippur? It has to do with bracha in the afternoon.
Because it takes more than a few hours.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah, you know you're going to pray.
So we said already, if it's a few hours, it's a hefsek.
Even mine doesn't matter.
Yes. If we're speaking that it helps only if you had in mind to take it off and you put it back on right away. But if you took for several hours, then it's a hefsek.
So what's the shortest amount of time that you don't have to say bracha?
We just discussed it in the beginning. That it says by tefillin, it's about 2 hours. Maybe today it's less. We discussed why. By talis, it's about 3 hours.
So
Why? Probably because Shabbos, it takes us this amount. The hefsek is usually the size of how much it takes the whole mitzvah. So on Shabbos, the whole davening takes us about 2 hours, 3 hours. So the hefsek is also something like that. But in Shulchan it says that the talis is several hours, which is probably about 3 hours. And but film it's about 2, 3 hours. It's up to how much it takes.
So when you go to someone's house to eat Shabbos, take off your talis, and you're there for more than 3 hours,
Yes,
you
you have to say a bracha.
put it back on, you have to say bracha.
Right. If it's 3 hours, yes.
Even though you're putting it on only
Walk home.
not the Shem Mitzvah b'chol.
It doesn't matter. You can't put it on after the mitzvah and without a bracha. It is a mitzvah. Shecht is a mitzvah. But when you shecht, you have to say a bracha.
And what happens if it's after Shkia that your guest is finally leaving the house?
Then you can say the bracha, obviously.
Can they carry it, put it back on?
Yes, but you can say the bracha.
Also, before you're talking about when you're taking off your tefillin and you basically go to the bathroom,
Yes.
and then you have to say bracha again. What if you're between Baruch Shamar and Shmon Esrei?
Then you say it you say it after Shmon Esrei the bracha. Or by Ishtabach. If you put it back on after Ishtabach, after Bochu, then you have to wait till after Shmon Esrei, and after Shmon Esrei you have to touch it and kiss it, and then you say the bracha. Because you have to touch it. It says, if you couldn't say a bracha when you put it on, then when you could say a bracha, then touch it, which is memashmesh, is something that you do, and then you say the bracha. It says also the din if you have to put on in the morning before sunrise, before alays, because you have to go out and you wouldn't be able to lay that. So you can't say a bracha then. Not on your talis and not on your tefillin. But when time comes that you could, then you have to be memashmesh, or the tzitzis, you have to take the tzitzis and say the bracha and then kiss it, and so you did something.
That's between Baruch Hu and Shmon Esrei, but
Right.
between Baruch Shamar and
So then you could say the bracha by Bochu.
Before
Yes.
Before Baruch Hu.
Before Bochu.
After Ishtabach?
After Ishtabach. I don't remember now if you could say it in middle of the Birkas HaShachar also. Could be that you could be there is a difference between the tefillin and the talis. And talis I think you can't, and at tefillin I think you could, but you have to look it up. Clear. It's,
The mashmas is just touch. I thought like if you want to say I'm in Gishmer Rabba, while you're putting on the tefillin shel rosh.
We'll discuss it. Now we spoke about only that you didn't make no hefsek, but you couldn't say the bracha when you put it on because you are in the middle of the davening, or because it's not the time yet.
Sorry, this is we say the bracha of tzitzis before Baruch Shamar.
Yes.
Yeah, when it applies. If they didn't do the bracha before, mention more to bracha, if they didn't change tzitzis and change on for Baruch Shamar, then he has to do the bracha for Baruch Shamar.
I didn't answer the question. Say it again.
When applies the din that if someone didn't do the bracha of tzitzis before, so he has to do it in Baruch.
It's either that you went to toilet after Bochu, so you can't say a bracha between Impiris Krishma. Either when you had to put it on when it was still dark outside. So when it's dark outside, you can say a bracha.
So yeah,
But you had to. So you wait till sunrise, and then you say the bracha. So then you have to touch it.
Not Mishiach.
Mishiach.
Yeah. There is a fourth case where there would be a difference in hefsek between tzitzis and tefillin. You put it in the talis Shabbos, and by accident falls off. You didn't even realize that. Then you just pick it up, and you will put it back up. You have to say bracha.
None of it remains on you.
What?
A little bit is still on you, then it's on
If a little bit is on you, you still don't have to. But it falls off, even if it's on your hand, you have to say it. Why? We just took off for 1 minute. So it says, when you take it for 1 minute, it's because it's not a hesach hadas. You had in mind to put it back on. So taking off is nothing. But here you didn't have anything in mind. It just fell off. So the mitzvah finished. So now when you start again, you have to say a bracha.
Even though you have tzitzis on.
Yes, it doesn't help.
So basically, when you had it in mind before, you're like making a bridge for the mitzvah to be...
But you had in mind it before, but now it's not that you had in mind to take it off, just fell off, so it finished.
It's finished.
What if you realize it's falling
Well,
off?
this part comes too. The same thing should be by tefillin. Tefillin doesn't fall off in the middle from my head, right? But tefillin has a place where it has to stay, in the middle. But for some reason it fell off and went on the side. It is just like it fell off, because it's not on the right place, it's on the side. So then also when you put it back, you should have said bracha. So the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan that people don't do that. And what is the reason for that? And what is the difference between the talis and the tefillin? So the Rebbe explains the difference. That when you put on film, you put it on just for davening. And with film, you're not allowed to have a hesach hadas. You're not, some people don't even talk when they have film on. Because you're not allowed to have hesach hadas. Okay, you're allowed to talk. And some people don't. But you're not allowed to have just a litzonos session. It's in the Shulchan Aruch. While you're having film on, you're not allowed to be in a litzonos mood, which is not serious mood. Even if you talk, but you have film on, so you have to be serious. So since you are in this mode, even if you fell off from the place, it can be considered like you didn't have it in mind. You're the whole downing in mind of the film. So even this second when it went off from the place, you actually then still in the mode of the Yerushalayim of the film. So it's not considered like you didn't think now about that. Mashenkin batalas. There's no din that if you sit with a talis, you're not allowed to speak for beteilim or make litzones. Yes, it's not good to have litzones, but there is no reason that there is a problem with the talis. So therefore, there is. If it falls off, then it's a hefsek. But from this we see that theoretically, if you do have in mind while it's falling, even though you didn't have you didn't want it to fall, but if you had in mind, it helps. Without this additional halacha that we learned in film, we could say that if it falls off without you having it in mind, it doesn't make any difference what you think.
Have one in mind.
That you want that you are now your film now, your talisan, you want it to stay with it. You didn't think about it. But if you thought about it, then even if it fell off by itself, it's not a hefsek. As we see by the film, even it fell off by itself. But since you are serious now and you want to continue with the film, so you have it in mind all the time, so it's not called the hesach hadas. So that shows us, talis falls off, and I feel it's falling off, and I want to catch it, and I didn't catch it. It shouldn't be a hefsek. Because you had in mind while it's falling, you had in mind it shouldn't fall. You had in mind that you want to stay with the talis. Theoretically, you could say it doesn't help. But you see, by film, it helps. Because we say that since by film you're always thinking about it film, so even if it falls off, it's not called the hesach hadas. So the same thing is by talis, when you want to catch it and you don't catch it, which is the case in most of the instances. It doesn't so often happen that you stand and all of a sudden you see that you realize that you are without a talis and you take a look at the floor. That's not what happens. Usually it falls off and you want to catch it, you don't catch it. So then you have in mind while it's falling that it shouldn't fall. So we see from film that it helps.
But you know that you don't want your talent to fall off. So
Yes, but we don't care what you don't want. If while it happens you didn't have it in mind, we don't consider because you didn't have it in mind. While it's falling, it's not you did it. It fell off. And the same thing about film. But then we say about film that even though it happens by itself without your knowledge, and it's not, we can't consider your thinking, but if while it happens you think that you want to stay with it, it does help. So therefore, the same thing is batalas. So therefore, the whole deal of batalas, when you have to say a bracha, is when you stand and all of a sudden you see you have nothing on. But if you realize that it's falling and you didn't catch it, then it should help.
Because I was going to ask you, when was it the first day Sukkot Nun Beis when the Rebbe's talis fell off? Was it
Sukkot Nun Beis, that was in Russia, Commission.
Oh, yeah, because the thing was the first day Sukkot the Rebbe's
Yeah.
talis fell off.
In the middle of dining.
Yeah, doing that
Yeah.
Musaf that first day.
Musaf.
Yeah.
And he was
Out,
trying.
yeah, I know, I know. We
I
were
don't
going
know,
for
I
that.
was-
Yeah, it was Sukkot Nun days, yeah.
So we spoke about 4 kinds of hefsek in middle of talis and the middle of tefillin. One is when it took a long time, and one is when you took a short time, but you went to toilet or to the mikveh. One is that you had in mind to take it for a long time, then you changed your mind. And one is when it fell off. In all 4 cases, we see that not necessarily the same halacha like the tzitzis by the talis you have, but by the tefillin. So you always have to know what's a din here and what's a din here. All these 4 instances, it's after you already said the bracha and you put on your talis, or after you already said the bracha you put on the tefillin. Therefore, when is it considered a hefsek? When it fell off, when you went to a place that you couldn't do it, when there was several hours hefsek. But let's say you just speak a little bit during beteilim, or even when you daven, or even when you answer amen. It's no hefsek. So what? When I have my talis on, I have tefillin on, I can daven. Sure, I can daven. That's why I put it on to daven. So davening is not a hefsek. Speaking is not a hefsek. That's all if it's already on me. But let's say you said a bracha, and then before you put your tefillin on, you spoke a few words. Then you have to say a bracha again. Because when you say a hefsek between the bracha and the mitzvah, or even if you eat something, you say a mitzvah lech menoretz before you ate, you said one word, it's a hefsek. And the same thing is if there is by the table when I make kiddush and I make my whole family and the guest, so they hear from me be'er pregofen and they drink. If they say a word, it's a hefsek, and they have to say pregofen themselves. They can be etzi from me. And not only when they say stam a word. Even if they said something a posik, or even if they heard somebody else in shul, they heard kiddush from me, and then they hear the chazal says kedusha or kaddish or bochu, and they say bochu. It's also a hefsek. And therefore, we never say Amen between a bracha and between the mitzvah. Unless we are yetzer. Take in mind that there is a different, that the Shechiyonu, he mentioned Shechiyonu, there is a different how we say the Shechiyonu in Kippur and how we say the bracha for Hallel by every Rosh Chodesh. Let's say we want to say the bracha ourselves. So we first hear it from the Chazan. And we answer Amen. And then we say the bracha of the Kreis Hallel. When we say the bracha of Shechiyonu in Kippur, we say the bracha first. And then we hear Amen from the Chazan. We hear the bracha from the Chazan and we say Amen to the Chazan. Why is it different? Why don't we also by Hallel first say the bracha ourselves, like in Kippur, and then the Chazan will finish it loud and will also answer Amen. Because that Amen will come out between our bracha and the Hallel, which is a hefsek. By Krishma, before Krishma, the Chazan always ends we shouldn't hear it. Why? It says no, because if he would say loud, and I already said ba'avo, so my omen would be a hefsek between the brocha and shema. And we're not allowed to say omen between. But by Yom Kippur, after the Sharionu, there is nothing else. So we could say it before, and we don't care about it. So we see here that between the brocha and the mitzvah, even one word omen is a hefsek.
Why don't we do like Gal Yisrael?
By Gal Yisrael, it's because Misnach Yudel Tefillah, it's not because a hefsek, because the brocha is not a brocha on the davening.
Why don't we do the same then?
Why we don't say it loud? Because somebody else should say Omen. Why here? There is a discussion. I don't know if there is a clear explanation why here like that. But in general, we say Gal Yisrael loud because other people, if they hear the brocha, they answer Omen. The one that davens ends after him. But that's not here the subject. Let's not go into that. Why?
It's only harmony.
Yes, I know. But let's not go into because that's not our subject. We are speaking here about the hefsek between the brocha and the talis of the tefillin. Usually we don't say a hefsek. When we say the brocha, right, when we start the brocha, we're already starting to cover ourselves with the talis, with the Tifas Ishmaelim. And when we say the brocha and tefillin, we right away start turning. But what is it negeya? It's negeya because we putting on tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh. Actually, there are two mitzvahs. And we say one brocha on both mitzvahs. So if we put on the shel yad, and while we put on the shel yad, we have already our shel yad on. We hear a chazan, and we answer Omen. That's a hefsek. We said Omen. So when we put on the shel rosh, we have to say another bracha. Because we already said the Omen, or bochu, or kedusha, anything we say, it's already a hefsek. Because it's a hefsek between the bracha and the second mitzvah. This is one thing. But then comes up something else that happens sometimes. That when I put on tefillin, by mistake, I said the bracha and I put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. As I put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, I realize this is Rabbeinu Tam's. I see on the back it says Rabbeinu Tam's. So I want to take off the Rabbeinu Tam's and put the Rashi on. Do I have to say another bracha on the Rashi? Theoretically not. Why not? Because when you said the bracha, you had in mind to put on this Rashi. And this Rashi is laying in front of you. So there is no reason why this bracha shouldn't be enough to the Rashi. This is if you didn't start saying hoidu. If you said anything in davening, it's already like you answered Omen between Shel Yad and Shel Rosh. Just like Shel Yad and Shel Rosh is two mitzvahs, and you're not allowed to be mafsik between the bracha and the second mitzvah, the same thing is also when you have the Rabbeinu Tam's and Rashi, and if you said something, it doesn't help. You have to say bracha and Rashi again. So if you already have to say a bracha and Rashi again, then there is no reason to take off right away the Rabbeinu Tam's. You have the Rabbeinu Tam's on already, say Krishma, say Kaddish Vayoki, because we say it in the end, then take it off, then put on your Rashi, and after Rashi you wouldn't have to put on your Rabbeinu Tam's again. But if you didn't say anything, you just put it on, you realize right away, so you just take it off, you put on your Rashi, you don't say a bracha, then you don't say now Krishma and Kaddish Vayoki.
What if you realize that you actually davened with Rabbeinu Tam's And then after the davening, you realize that. Then what are you supposed to do?
So then you davened already, so but then when you put on Rashi, you will say the Kaddish Krishma and Kaddish Vayikviach on Rashi. That's obvious.
With the bracha.
No.
So what if you switch? You when you put on, you don't want just to put it on and to take it off. So you want to say Krishma and something else. So you say Krishma, you say Kaddish Vayikviach, and that's it. But we are speaking if, and
With
then
the
you
bracha.
certainly have to say a bracha on the Rashi, because you already davened. Davened is a hefsek between one mitzvah and the other mitzvah.
But if you realize sometime, during particularly the Zimra, that you have Rebbeinu Thomas on, you keep them on, you don't take them.
So there's no problem. You could, and after Shmoneh, you'll put it on and you'll say from after Shmoneh.
Yeah, but you don't take it off then.
There's only one problem with that, because the same halacha, already mentioned once, the same halacha is also by Shchita. That when you are shechting, Sheichet is shechting 2 chickens, he has in mind 2 chickens. So you're not allowed to be mafsik, not like it's in the middle of a mitzvah. Because the second shchita is if you speak anything, so it's a hefsek between the bracha and the second shchita, just like between the bracha and the hefsek. So this is the din. In Shulchan Aruch you see that if you speak anything, you have to say another bracha. Shachtim don't do that. Why? What's the technical reason why they don't do that? Because once upon a time, a sheikhet, when they brought a chicken to him, or a few chickens to him, he shachted them. So he made one bracha, and he had in mind all 5, and he shachted them all, and he didn't speak. But today, a sheikhet shechts a whole day, hours and hours. To hold in yourself from not saying one omen or one word, it's not possible. So they don't. And if you ask them explanation, they'll tell you one very good explanation. Everyone does so. But there is no other explanation for it. So there is sometimes that you don't. And therefore, I also heard by Rabbi Tams and Rashi that even if you davened, you said if you kapitlach already, you said till Heidu or till Baruch She'omar, then you could still take off and put in your Rashi on, you don't say a bracha. I don't know why, because it's the same thing as you spoke between Rashi, between Shiliad and Shilrosh. But actually, people are a little makel in that, not to say a bracha on the second one. There is, even, we know that in Rosh Hashanah, after Tkiyas, we don't speak till after davening. Why is that? You already said a bracha, you already started the mitzvah, because you heard already the first Tkiyas. So in the middle of the mitzvah, we could talk. Just like after I put on my talis, after I put on the tefillin, there's no more hefsek. The reason is because over there is also, it's considered, it's not mamesh, but it's considered like 2 mitzvahs. The tefillin, the tkiyas of me'umet, and the tkiyas of miyushev, the chachomim are looking at it as 2 kind of mitzvahs. So therefore, we don't want to make a hefsek between the bracha and the second. But if you do speak, there's no problem, because after all, it's 1 mitzvah. It says in Shulchan Aruch. If it would be take 2 mitzvahs, then you have to say. So back about the tefillin, there is no question that if you, between the Shiyad and Shilrosh, you say answer Omen, or you answer Bochu, or you answer Gdusha, you have to say another bracha on the Shilrosh. And the other bracha on the Shilrosh is what we are Neheg is saying al mitzvahs. But and the same thing is also about talis. Let's say you put on 2 talis of time. Or you didn't have a talis cotton, you came to shul, you want to put on talis cotton, talis cotton, and you want to say 1 bracha. If you have both, you don't say a word in between, it's okay. If you say a word in between, it's a hefsek between the bracha and the second mitzvah. But, and the same, the era should be the same thing also by Rashi Rabbeinu Tam. I heard some Rabbanim say that even if you started davening, you spoke a little bit, since you already with the tefillin on, you don't have to say a bracha. I don't know why. I just don't know why the Shochtim are not saying a bracha also they're speaking. So I don't know exactly how far we go with that. But that's, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, that's the halacha. If you speak a word, even in Omen, even in the Divrei Torah, between the brocha and the second mitzvah, then you have to say the second brocha again.
You mentioned last week about that the Bachman, you said you'd get into it, that the night is not a hefsek, and therefore that's why the Bachman need two, who are making the bracha al mitzvah tzitzis, need 2 pairs of tzitzis.
Correct.
So if Lemaisa, 2 boys, let's say, find themselves in the same place,
Yes.
would it be advisable in the morning that they each make the bracha on the other one's beged and wear it for
There is-
Dalet Amos, and then
You could do it, but Dalet Amos and then
then swap back?
Could be. I never saw people to do that. Usually people have one for the day and one for the night, and they
Right.
keep changing.
Right, but if they didn't
But
have
if
it,
they didn't,
2
could
people,
be.
would that be
Could
an
be.
answer that if they switch and the
Could be.
matana
Could
menas
be. The reason
lahachzeh?
why we can't is because there is a sofek, because there is a machlekes if you are chayev on tzitzis on the telescope at night. Because there is a machlekes what means that at night is possible.
Potter.
It's potter. Only if you put it on at night, or only if it's a beged like a pajama that is made for the night only. So therefore, if you sleep with the one that you are wearing during the day, so could be it's not considered a hefsek, so therefore, and next day you don't have to say, and it doesn't help if you go to mikveh, as we
Right,
discussed.
right. But 2 boys could
Could be,
switch for brachas, let's say.
L'cheire you could.
Yeah.
To get back to Kiddush with Shechiyanu, Weiler, women who make a Shechiyanu by little benching.
Yes, therefore I always emphasize that when I say Kiddush, they shouldn't answer Omen on the Shechiyanu that I made, because they don't have to make Shechiyanu, they already made before. So the Omen, the worst comes to worst. If they say Omen,
It's worse. Try to tell your wife, so you start making on Yom Kippur, make a baby.
usually they don't say a paper.
Yeah, all of a sudden on Yom Kippur they said Amen.
And usually they say the Omen. But could be it's not mamash hefsek, because it's actually the Shechiyanu is not a hefsek. Just like the Omen of the Kiddush and of the Shechiyanu and of the Neir, it's all not a hefsek. But she doesn't have to, but it's part of it. So maybe it's not clear that it's a hefsek, but it's better certainly. I always tell them that they should.
So it should,
then
I mean,
they
to
lose out-
Shechiyanu.
maybe they're losing out on the Amen, not necessarily when it's not necessary.
They're losing out the Omen because they don't have to. And
Yeah, but
if
they have the ability
could
to
be
say
it's
an Amen,
a-
you tell them.
But could be it's a hefsek, but I don't know for sure. Because by, you see, the reason is because by all the things that we say, like Kiddush and Dola and Chasam and the others, and the Bris, the second brocha is not a hefsek between the Berach Pe'agofen and drinking. We just said that anything that we say is a hefsek between the Birkas HaMitzvahs and the mitzvah. Here we say Berach Pe'agofen, and then we say another brocha, and then we drink. So the other brocha should be a hefsek between the Berach Pe'agofen and the drinking. But we say it's not a hefsek.
Well, that's why Chazal put it in
Because
there.
it's part of it. It's made for it. So the question is if this kind of parts that are made for it, even if she already doesn't have to, because she said already Shechiyanu, but it's still part, then it could be not hefsek. And then there is other reasons. Other people say other reasons why it shouldn't be a hefsek. Ashkenazi has a ganzen biur. He said that the Shechiyanu they say on the
Candlelight.
candles is Shechiyanu on the Yontif. The Shechiyanu that we say in Kiddush is also on the mitzvah of Kiddush of Yontif. So they didn't say yet Shechiyanu on the Kiddush, on the mitzvah of Kiddush that it comes only once a year. They just said Shechiyanu on the Yontif. But now they could still be Yetzer from a Shechiyanu because the Shechiyanu that I say now is also on the Kiddush itself. So therefore they could say on the...
So then the first day sukkah,
And you don't-
they surely could say Amen because he gave Eked after Leisha Sukkah.
Yes.
So then for sure they
No
could say Amen.
question, yes. Yes.
Oh, you didn't get the good-
Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's all discussion about the first night. There's no question, but the other nights it's not clear. So he holds and not everyone agrees, but it's a whole discussion about if that Shechianu they are Yetzer, they have to be Yetzer, and if they don't have to Yetzer, if that's considered Yetzer. So it's not clear. La'atchila, I always say not to, but according to the Ashkenaz, I shouldn't say not to.
Why was it Rosh
What?
Rosh if the tomb's on Rosh?
That's
We don't. We
in
don't.
Shulchan Aruch. He speaks about the Shulchan
No,
Aruch.
but we don't.
We don't.
Even when we do make
So we
something,
don't say the bracha.
right? But if you do, but if you make a hefsek,
But
but if
those-
there's a hefsek, then you make the bracha. Then you don't say the bracha.
But in Shulchan Aruch says about the other day.
Right, because it's suffix.
Because
It's a suffix, you have to make the bracha. It's one mitzvah.
Because if you say, but usually when you have a suffix, you don't say a bracha. The suffix of course, lot.
Right.
Here we say that we should say the bracha, but we should say Baruch because the minhag is to say, so we don't want to stop it. Our minhag is not to, but those that their minhag is to say, so they're saying it anyways. But still there is a suffix, so they say that's why you should say Baruch